This is a story about a suspicious disappearance at sea. Picture this scene with me. Anne and Mike Coriam are enjoying a balmy spring evening at home in a village near Chester. It's March 2011. Anne and Mike, they're in their 50s. They're both adventurous. They love a bit of foreign travel.
And I presume they're planning a cruise.
Good guess on that one. I know that cruises have connotations, let's say, of being only for the golden oldies. But it's Rebecca, who's their youngest daughter, who is on the cruise. And when I say on here, I don't mean that she's on holiday, okay? Rebecca is actually working on a cruise ship over in America. It is a cruise liner owned by the entertainment giant Disney. So Rebecca works as a youth activities coordinator in the kids club on board, and she's out there living her dream until in the early hours of March 22nd, which was Rebecca's 24th birthday, she vanishes as the ship cruises off the Mexican coast. Understandably, the Coriams are stunned. They're reeling, but they also just have this feeling of uneasiness.
Right, because their 24-year-old daughter's disappeared. And I presume there's more than a bad feeling about this.
There is. So the Coriams feel uneasy about how Rebecca's disappearance is being investigated. Her dad, Mike, wrote a timeline, basically, of how this whole just unbelievable situation, to be honest, unfolds. Everything I'm going to tell you now from this point onwards are his words from the second that they step onto the Disney ship. So Mike writes, "It was here that we meet the captain and other senior Disney officials. It was during the meeting we asked the captain what does he think happened, to which he replied..."
So this is Disney captain's theory of what happened to Rebecca.
Yeah, exactly. And this is Mike now explaining what the captain's theory is. Right. So he says, I quote, "He thinks Rebecca was sitting on the edge and a huge wave came and hit the ship, causing it to rock, and she fell over."
Which sounds plausible to me, although terrible, of course.
Okay, so what then happens next is her poor parents, they get taken to the spot where the captain thinks that Rebecca fell from. So they lay some flowers down by the handrail and they all sort of observe a minute's silence out of respect. So this spot, it's at the bow of the ship, okay, which is the front part. But to Mike and Anne already, there's just something that's not adding up. So just stick with me here and try and visualize this. So if Rebecca was on deck 5, like they'd said, that is already quite high above the sea, and it is protected by this 6-foot high metal wall, meaning that this freak wave that supposedly came would have had to have been almost 100 feet high to somehow throw Rebecca overboard.
So 100 feet, that's what, like a 10-story building?
Yeah, it's really high, really, really high. And as I was kind of writing out my little notes around my living room about this story, I was thinking to myself, surely if that happened, other people on board are going to have noticed a wave that big. Surely. Mm-hmm. Well, later on, they established that there's no record of a giant wave hitting the ship. And apparently, the sort of state and the turbulence of the sea was just pretty normal at the time.
And did anyone see her falling?
So there isn't a witness.
And 3.3 thousand people on this ship?
Yeah.
Yep.
So from that day, really, when Rebecca went missing, which is 13 long years ago now, her parents, Anne and Mike, they've just exhausted really every avenue to try and find out what might have happened to her. There has been debates in Parliament. They've taken trips, to the High Commission in London. There's been newspaper investigations, calls to the Foreign Office. They have just never given up. And I think what's so sad for them is that Rebecca's body has never been found. They've never had an inquest, and they're just not any closer to knowing what happened to their daughter that morning. And we did also approach Disney Parks and Resorts for comment, but they didn't reply even after we reminded them.